Hi. In this episode, we're going to show how to modify your bootloader. Let's say you want to edit your bootloader in order to identify a second kernel which is available that your user can use, or another operating system that your user needs access to, or any other number of boot parameters that you want to modify in order to customize or change your boot up process. Well, where do you start? What you need to do is understand that, of course, your GRUB configuration file is in the boot directory. However, it is never recommended to edit that boot directory by yourself. So where you're going to start is actually modifying the GRUB configuration file that's inside etc default grub. Now, this is the configuration file that is actually being used in order to create your GRUB configuration. Now, once you update the necessary boot parameters inside that file, you can update your GRUB configuration with the command grub2-mkconfig. Now, even if you need to make even more changes, you can always temporarily edit additional boot options by pressing E to interrupt that boot process. Now, coming up in this next lab, we're going to show how you can modify certain boot parameters to edit and customize your boot process and push those changes onto your GRUB configuration file. Please join us in the lab where we show how to modify your bootloader. In this episode, we're going to show how to modify the bootloader. The first thing I'm going to do is log into my terminal through Activities and click on Terminal and just zoom in a little bit for readability. And the first thing I'm going to do is, in fact, switch to the root user. Now, the bootloader in Linux is called grub2, and its necessary configuration is found in the file. Let's read it. It's called etc default grub. So these are the default values that grub is using. Again, letting you know about the bootstrap itself. On the menu screen, when you power on your computer, this is how long the boot will stay on for, which is 5 seconds. This is what it will say, which is whatever system you're using, found from this system release file. Will my default values be selected? And yes, they will. This is the value here. The submenu will show, the output will show in the console. And this is the command line here. And we can see all these necessary boot parameters. You can look and view other boot parameters with the command man7 boot param. This is a manual page that contains a description for all the boot parameters that can be used when starting up our computers, when starting the actual kernel. So you can, I encourage you to read through it so you can give specific type of boot arguments in order to boot your system. Once you know what you want to change, you can actually edit this default grub file and add your necessary boot parameters. Let's in my case here, what I'm going to do is, in fact, remove a line from this here, which is this line that says RGHB and quiet. Quiet is really suppressing all the boot messages. So I'm going to delete this and then save this boot configuration. Now, let's say whatever changes you've made to the boot configuration, you need to then apply them into the actual boot file, which is somewhere in the boot directory. But of course, you should never edit that file directly. You should be actually using the command grub2-mkconfig. It is going to take the values from the file that we just edited and make a new boot configuration from it. Now, of course, this is just going to print it out on the screen, so I need to actually push, using this redirect, those values into the boot grub2 grub.cfg actual boot configuration file. So let's do that. It's going to generate a new boot configuration, and now the next time I boot, using reboot, you should see those specific boot parameters come into play. In my case, what I did was actually remove the parameter that is suppressing all the boot messages. So I'm actually expecting what I see here. These boot messages scroll past the screen since they are not now being suppressed. Of course, there are other boot parameters that are meant for other things, like setting security level, setting access, and other type of things. And of course, I encourage you to read through those boot parameters in order to best understand what you want to change in the boot process. And then the rest is simple, simply by typing the grub2-mk config command to create a new configuration for your bootstrap. This closes this episode. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.